Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, joined by my friend Andrea Picciotti-Bayer. She's legal analyst for EWT and news and director of the Conscience Project. Follow her work at conscience-project.org. Andrea, thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, Marcus. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you. And this was a delightful piece that you wrote, and I want to begin by asking you to speak to a very broad topic, which is the fact that our nation and even how we understand human dignity and liberty are fundamentally Catholic heritages that the Church gave to the world.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is an exciting time to talk about this. I feel myself repeating now, this is our Catholic moment, right? both kind of in world history, but also in our nation and for the U.S. Church in particular.
So tell us about the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, because I also want to make the distinction here that the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast tends to have a different tone, feel, and rhythm compared to the National Prayer Breakfasts of late.
No, you're absolutely right, and obviously I don't want to kind of throw any shade on the effort for anyone to pray for our nation and with our elected officials. But the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast has been going strong for several years and bringing Catholics together, many of whom are in our nation's capital, to pray for our country, to celebrate and to hold up wonderful work that's being done by Catholics in the country itself, and to kind of present ourselves before God in profound humility. This last prayer breakfast, which happened last week, was quite exceptional to see, the Washington Convention Center ballroom filled with people ready to pray. And they prayed the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and really were able to celebrate all the wonderful apostolates and ministries that are going on, not just in Washington, D.C., but across the country.
Tell us about the event itself. What were some of the things that happened there?
It's interesting. There was, obviously a very big focus on the relationship that U.S. Catholics have in celebrating our nation's 250th anniversary, right? And so a lot of it was that faith and patriotism go hand in hand. You really can have a love of God, a love of the church, and a love of country, and they shouldn't be contradictory loves, but instead kind of promote a love of God and country together. And so there was a representative from the Trump administration talking about the really lovely things that are happening in Washington, D.C. and across the country in celebration of the 250th. But it was also a wonderful time. There was the man that plays Jesus for the Chosen series came in, and as I mentioned earlier, led the ballroom in praying the chaplet. And at one point, I brought one of my college kids with me along for the morning, and I leaned over and whispered, "We're praying with Jesus, with Jesus." It was quite lovely to see, someone who's quite famous, really embracing prayer with such great and intense humility. There was also a wonderful award given to 3 young entrepreneurs that started the Hallow app. They were Notre Dame grads, and they were given a recognition for their contribution as laity to the church in America. And it was lovely because they gave shout outs not only to the value of friendship that they had with one another, the importance of prayer, but as a mom, I loved hearing that they really did give a lot of credit to their parents that were willing to take a risk on this and not say, get a real job, but allow them to kind of step into this important technological need that people were kind of filling with a lot of things that brought them away from prayer, and using technology to bring them into greater relationship with God.
Tell us about Claire Lai and her presence, her speech, and what that communicated to the overall tone of the event.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. I'm sure your listeners remember the plight of Jimmy Lai. This is the Hong Kong businessman who has basically been found guilty on trumped-up charges of violating the new national security law. This is because he's a proponent of freedom, of religious freedom, of democracy, and the Chinese Communist Party just doesn't want to have anything to do with that, and they've sent him to basically a life sentence. Sentence him. Claire, who's here in the U.S. along with her mother and brother, continues courageously to speak for his liberation, his freedom, and his courage, and how his faith is really sustaining him in essentially solitary confinement, perpetual solitary confinement. She's spoken about concerns for his health. He's an older man, and this is, as I mentioned, in effect, a life sentence, and the injustice of his incarceration and sentence. This has been a theme for several years now, that people came together and prayed for Jimmy Lai to sustain him, and also to pray for his release. It was a good reminder that there are persecuted in our midst, and that there are people that are really responding to the modern day martyrdom. And Jimmy is probably one of the best examples that I can point to, and many friends of the Lai family were there in attendance, and it was quite moving and very poignant.
Can you also share with us the overall sense of the fact that everyone there shared a common belief, a common worldview, and what that did, especially when engaging in prayer together?
It's really kind of a wonderful moment where you feel that the Catholic Church is just one huge family. Obviously I live in the DC area, so I saw a lot of people that are from my parish, or, where that have children in the same schools as my children, but it was a wonderful familial moment. It wasn't, a moment where people were at arm's length, but really were embracing each other as, one big family get together, a great family reunion. And to be able to pray with joy and hope, pray with dedication, obviously for our brothers and sisters who are persecuted, but also pray in celebration. Pray that we are blessed. We have many blessings of freedom that we're enjoying. And our greatest blessing, of course, is our relationship with our Lord, to understand and to have the plenitude of faith, to have access to the sacraments. After the breakfast ended, people did go and there was daily mass being celebrated at a nearby church. And it was a really wonderful moment. My college daughter that came with me, she's at a secular university. There aren't a lot of people that are connected to their faith where she's studying, or if they are, they're keeping it hidden, kind of under a bushel basket. And I said, look around you. This is a ballroom full of people who are not afraid to pray in public, who are connected through faith, and who are known for their Catholic identity. Several of the speakers did talk about the influence of Catholics, not only in our founding, but in the history of the United States. And it was wonderful to be part of that.
When Maureen Ferguson, your friend, introduced the House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson, it was clearly a very personal moment for you.
Yeah, Maureen has been a great and dear friend of mine. We worked together when we were both at the Catholic Association. Maureen now is a commissioner on the U.S. Commission for International Religious Freedom. Mm-hmm. She's also a very connected person in Washington, D.C., and she's close to Speaker Johnson, who isn't Catholic, but came to talk to Catholics and talked about the importance of prayer in his own life. And that before he does anything significant, he prays. And sometimes he's ridiculed and made fun of, even, in the Capitol for doing so in Congress. And it was a good reminder that we need to be not concerned about worldly appearances or the kind of keeping in the good graces of others, but really be connected to our Lord. And, again, Maureen is on the board of the directors for the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, along with just really wonderful people who you see doing exceptional work in their professional lives. And so I'm so impressed with all of them, and I can't wait to go next year.
Andrea, thank you very, very much for joining us to talk about this.
Thanks, Marcus. Have a lovely afternoon.
You too. My guest has been Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, and she's been sharing with us about the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast and that unified sense of reverence of giving our nation to God and trusting His grace to guide us. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.